Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler, and great to have you here on Runday Presents. I'm a serial entrepreneur with 17 startups under the belt. I've been involved in startups for over 35 years. Love generative AI and love incredible people that are making a dent in the universe. So, with that, I have an incredible guest today, Remi Adeleke. He is a Navy SEAL. He's got an incredible story of coming from riches to rags to riches. He is the CEO of Remi Consulting. He's been involved in TV shows like The World's Toughest. He's an author of a book and today we're going to talk about that and his background and his incredible story of making the world a better place. So with that, I'd like to introduce Remi. Hey, Remi, how you doing today?
Hey, how you doing, Gary? Thanks for having me on, brother.
So you got an incredible background. Like seriously, like he's the first person, coming in 1987 over to the US, going from, riches. How was that kind of adjustment for you coming over to the US after, being royalty and essentially in Nigeria? What was it like?
It wasn't a hard transition, I would say, for two reasons. One, because my mom, she did a really good job of masking the reality of what had happened. We had a small apartment in the Bronx, but she did her best to keep that apartment well manicured. She was able to bring some of my dad's art and a lot of books from Nigeria to our apartment. So she decorated it, so nicely. So it was like hard. And she worked multiple jobs as well to make sure she could, provide for us the best she could. And then on top of that, being 5 years old and not fully understanding death, and then also not understanding riches and royalty and all of that stuff. And I didn't really notice the transition too much. And especially because when you're that age, as you know, the world is big to you. Everything is big to you, even a small little apartment. So the transition wasn't rough at all. If anything, it was really hard on my mom because she had to provide for two boys in the Bronx, work multiple jobs, and kind of not, and I don't want to use the word hide things from us, but protect us from things that she knew could bring us down.
And so when you went down through that, so, I know you said you had, an interesting childhood. So, how did you go from, you can get I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania. We got in a lot of trouble sometimes on the farm, right? But how did you go from that to going over to becoming a Navy SEAL? Did you wake up one day and say, "Oh, I want to become a Navy SEAL"? Or what was the transition like? How did you, go down through? Because, kids will be kids and get into things. And then all of a sudden, did you have one day you said, "Wow, I want to change my life"? Or what was that like?
It was a process. And that process started with storytelling, with film. In 1995, a film came out by the name of Bad Boys, and that was with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. And that was the first time I was able to see two African-American men who looked like me. They had a similar kind of swagger, but at the same time, they weren't playing drug dealers, they weren't playing athletes, and they weren't playing rappers. They were playing heroes. And so that was the first time I saw that and said to myself, wow, I could be something other than those things I thought I could only be growing up here in the Bronx. And so that first film planted a small seed. And then a year later, the same director, Michael Bay, he released his second film, which was The Rock. And that film had Navy SEALs in it. So that was my first exposure to Navy SEALs. And I remember after watching that film, I said to myself, if I ever turn my life around, I'm going to do that. And again, it was like a far-fetched idea. It's like right now me saying, if things ever get worse, I'm going to run for president. Chances of that happening is slim to none. And that was kind of how I kind of threw away that message and said, hey, if I ever turn my life around, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL. And so fast forward, I was getting in trouble and like selling drugs and doing other nefarious things to make money. And then long story short, I ended up getting involved in a deal with a drug dealer that went bad. I sold them some products that were supposed to last for a certain amount of time. Those products only lasted for a fraction of that time. And not only was my life threatened, but my mother's life was threatened as well. And that was a huge wake-up call for me. I gave the drug dealer back his money. And then I decided I'm not going to do anything anymore. I'm done with the street stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm done with the street stuff. And then a few months later, after 6 months of trying to make things work in the music industry, because I was trying to make it in the music industry, and after that didn't work out for a number of months, that's when I finally realized, okay, I need to get out of here, because if I do not get out of the Bronx, I'm going to end up going back to what I was doing, which was selling drugs and illegal scams and all this other stuff, and I'm going to end up dead or in prison. And so that's when I decided, you know what? Remember that little dream I had about being a SEAL? Let me go to the Navy and see what'll happen. And there's a lot more to the story, but I covered all in my my memoir, Transform. But I went to the Navy recruiter's office and told the recruiter I wanted to join and be a Navy SEAL, and she laughed at me. And then she had me take a practice ASVAB test, and I passed that. And then she had me, she ran my background. And when she ran my background, she discovered I had 2 warrants out for my arrest. I had a warrant in New Jersey and a warrant in New York. And so I got up and I ran towards the door, and she stopped me and asked me where I was. And I told her, I'm getting out of here. She told me, come back tomorrow. I said, for what? And she snapped at me and just said, come back tomorrow. And she said, she asked if I had a nice suit. And I said, no. She said, well, just come back in a collared shirt and some nice pants. So I came back the next day, and she was in her dress uniform. And she took me to she drove me to both judges in her government vehicle. She drove me to the judge in New Jersey, advocated on my behalf, said, hey, this kid's trying to join the Navy after an act of war, 9/11, had happened a few months earlier. And then she drove me to the New York courthouse, which was coincidentally a few blocks away from Ground Zero, and said the same thing to the judge. And both judges unanimously expunged my record. And then she went a step further and fudged the paperwork to sneak me into the Navy. And that was how I got into the Navy.
Wow, that's amazing. So how did it make you feel when you went from that moment when you ran to that door and she came to you? How did you feel, Remi?
I was scared. I was scared because I didn't know what she was. I didn't know what her intentions were. And then the more she talked to me, at that door, the more I realized, because growing up in the Bronx, especially when you do the things that I did, you have to learn how to read people. And that can mean a difference between life and death, prison or freedom. And so, after she talked with me for a bit, what I was able to read and take from that conversation, her tone, her demeanor, was that whatever it is that she was going to do for me was good. And so I was able to calm down. I went from fear to calming down. And then that, that led me to trusting her. And so, but the message I got out of that entire situation is the importance of giving people a second chance and not giving up on people. And also not just being willing to give somebody else a second chance, but to give ourselves a second chance, and a third chance, and a fourth chance, and a fifth chance, because I know that nobody is harder on me than me. I'm sure nobody is harder on you, Gary, than you. We are so hard on ourselves, and it's important that every day we wake up and pick ourselves up and say, you know what, I know yesterday sucked and I made a mistake or this happened, but I'm going to keep charging forward to accomplish the mission that I have. And so that was the main message I got out of that entire situation.
So when you go down through it, if you talk to, you have 3 kids, right? When you talk to your 4 kids, when you talk to your kids, what do you tell them? Because you've been through you've had, and we'll get into the rest of it, but you've had an extraordinary life. What is one thing that you tell your kids that, that lessons learned that you've had? What is one thing that you tell them to be able to help guide them through their life?
I tell them a lot. I'm talking to them all the time. One thing I talked to one of my sons about yesterday was the importance of not even putting yourself in a situation that can get you in trouble. So essentially cutting off whatever the potential bad situation could be, cutting it off at the root. Do not even entertain the most subtle experiences, because that little subtle situation can lead to something that can destroy the rest of your life. This was a conversation I had with my second oldest son yesterday, because he was about to get into some big trouble. And then the lesson, the reoccurring lesson that I give them on a daily basis is can't does not exist. Can't is incongruent with Adeleke, right? And especially when we look at my mom, and my mom is now going to be 72. She's like a social media phenomenon. She's blown up on social media and YouTube because she's a fitness trainer at 72. She looks like she's
wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. She does pull-ups and push-ups and runs with weight pads and all of this stuff. And she comes out here often to visit with her grandkids, my kids, and she's out running around with the kids and out working, out PTing them, and they're 9, 8, 4, and 3, and she's 72 years old, and so I point to my mom and say, look at that woman. That's the woman that raised me, and she's 72. And can't does not exist in her vocabulary. Can't did not exist in my father's vocabulary, and can't does not exist in my vocabulary. Therefore, it doesn't exist in yours either. And so that's the biggest message. When my kids say, "Oh, I can't," or "This is too hard," or "This," you can say it's hard, because the reality is there are a lot of things that are hard in life. My oldest son has dyslexia, and it's hard for him to read. That's okay, but I'm not going to let that be an excuse for you to say, I can't do it. You can do it. It's just going to take the extra hard work. And so that's something that, that's a reoccurring message.
I agree. And, so when that happened, that event where she cared about you and helped you and took you to those judges, that must ingrain and create motivation like you can't imagine inside of you, because you didn't want to let her down or yourself, because you got that second chance. And you don't want to screw it up. That must have been like a burning drive inside of your soul when that happened.
100%. 100%. As a matter of fact, when I got to boot camp, again, growing up in the Bronx, I had this street attitude. Don't disrespect me. I'll punch you in the face. That's just how I was raised. When you get into boot camp, you got drill instructors that are screaming at you, yelling at you, calling your names. You got all of this stuff. And like the street in me wanted to bite back, but because of what she did for me, which was a huge risk, because essentially the Navy was somewhat right. The Navy didn't want me in because I was a criminal, and so they were right. And why? Because they didn't want me to carry out my criminal activities in the military and create a toxic environment. So technically, based off of what was on paper, they were right. And so what she did was essentially an attempt to prove them wrong. And so for me, every day when I wanted to bite back, I wanted to do the wrong thing, I wanted to act out, I stopped myself and controlled myself, because I knew that she had taken a risk and I could not let her down. And so not only did I want to thrive in the Navy, I wanted to reach what is the pinnacle of success in the Navy, which is the SEAL teams. And really show her that the decision that she made was right and paid off. And I didn't let her down. Unfortunately, 2 years after she got me into the Navy, she died of an autoimmune disease. So she never got a chance to see the fruits of her decision. But, I'm very close with her family. I actually messaged her brother earlier today, and her daughter's become like a daughter to me. And so, but yeah, her decision was unmitigated motivation for me to do right.
I love it. Remi, there's a lot of kids out there that are right on the edge like you were, right? That could go either way, wherever they are around the world. So when they go down through having that guardian angel, she became like a guardian angel for you. She became the sense of righteousness, do the right thing. So, it is important. I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania, and a little farm in Pennsylvania, and you always have dreams. We didn't have a lot of money. We were poor. Yeah. And you have dreams to go out. And, my grandmother immigrated from Africa. She was 10 years old when she immigrated here from Africa, because they got kicked out. They had a lot of challenges over there. And they came over with dreams, just dreams, right? They also they had some money and they got booted. She came over with a dream, and my grandfather, they built businesses, etc. But you're right. Everybody can do it. You just must believe in your dreams. Yes. I mean, look at the amazing things you've done, right? So you went to the University of Charleston, you got your Bachelor of Science in Organization, Master of Science in Leadership, and each time, no matter what you do, if you got that dream, you can accomplish it. There ain't nothing holding you back. The only person who holds you back is yourself. That's it, man. Yep. And sometimes we forget the damn thing. It's you hold yourself back. Let yourself go. Try it. Don't just go out there and talk about it. Do it.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
people complain about stuff. It's unbelievable to me. They complain about it, and they have the greatest opportunity on the planet, an incredible country where there's opportunities. Hey, listen, sometimes stuff's, doesn't give you all the in your favor, the odds in your favor, but you got to overcome.
Exactly.
Go forward.
Exactly. And be okay. And be okay with the fact that you may fail the first time. That's a part of it,
Exactly. You may fail, but that doesn't mean you're going to fail. You can pivot, get back up on your feet, dust yourself off, and try it again. Exactly. You know what I mean? It's like, so when you went down through the SEAL training and you were, when they do they throw you in the water and you're under there and you think you're going to drown, right? And if you start acting up and you're not calm, right? You may drown, right? It's not. How did you do that, Remi? When you went under that water, how did you feel?
Well, the underwater stuff didn't bother me too much because I had a hard life, and so one thing I always say is that the Bronx was my first SEAL training. The Bronx and my mother's upbringing, because my mother was very hard on us in a good way because she saw the potential in us. That was my first SEAL training. So when I got to actual SEAL training, it sucked. Don't get me wrong. It was horrible. It was the worst physical and mental challenge of my life. To put things in perspective, my graduating class started with 270 and only 29 of us graduated. And that's the attrition rate of every class is, 80 to 90%. But, to go back to your question, I just learned how to, and we have a saying in our community, embrace the suck. And embrace a bad situation. And I had embraced a bad situation from the time I left Nigeria and came to the States. And so when I was underwater and I had my hands, we have this evolution called drown proofing, where your hands are tied behind your back and your feet are tied together, and you have to bob for 5 minutes, which means you gotta hit the bottom of the deck, push yourself off, take a breath when you reach the top, and go back down. You do that for 5 minutes. You have to stay calm. Then you gotta swim 50 meters down, 50 meters back, with your hands tied behind your back and feet tied together. Then you have to float for 5 minutes, and I don't float. My bones are dead, so I'm now swimming on the top of the surface and trying to breathe with my hand tied behind my back and my feet tied together. What got me through that was the importance of calm breeds calm. And that's something that, I learned from my mother, because going back to when my father died, I'll never forget, she sat us down on this red couch, placed my brother on her right side, me on her left side. And she said to us in such a calm way, "Your father has passed away. He's gone. He's not coming back." And she said it to us in such a calm way that me and my brothers, again, being young, 5 and 6, not fully understanding that, but she was just calm without a tear in her eye. She said it that way. Me and my brother just looked at each other and said, okay. We went back into our room and played with our toys. I will never forget that. The reason why she maintained her calmness was because she knew that if I do not stay calm, if I'm hysterical, if I'm crying, I'm going crazy, the kids are going to cry and become hysterical and go crazy. Then that's going to make me worse, and that's going to make them worse, and it's going to create this cycle. Did she cry? Absolutely. She went back into her room after she told us and cried her eyes out. But she protected us, and she taught me a lesson, and that was calm breeds calm. So when I'm in that situation, one thing I kept on saying to myself, I'm not going to die. My instructors are not going to let me die. Because where does most fear come from? Fear comes from the idea that you or you're going to die. Mm-hmm. And so, I just stayed calm and reminded myself, I'm not going to die. If I'm going to drown, the instructors are watching, they're going to come in and save me. And I'm going to finish this, and I'm going to do it right, so I don't have to do it again.
There you go. I love that. That's amazing. Yeah. So you went down through it. So, how did you get into, so you spent how many total years in the Navy? 13 years, almost 14 years, right?
Yeah, 13 and a half years. Yep. 13
and so when you went down through it, I mean, it must, you've seen a lot of stuff as a Navy SEAL. And, I remember when I was looking down through your things, you've been with some incredible people, and you've done incredible, like the world's toughest, right? So
Yeah.
people in that were, I think Jack Osborne was on that show, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, well, he was on season 2, so I wasn't on season 2. I was the host of season 1.
How was it? How was it, Remi, when you were bringing those folks in? How
Yeah.
did they change when you went down through this with them? Because you basically you've gone through it. How did you help them go through it?
Everybody came for a different reason. You had, one person came because they went through a really tough divorce and that really wrecked her. Another person came because they, had a loss, a great loss in their family, lost their father. So everybody came for different reasons. Another person came because they had this great long career in athletics, and then all of a sudden it's gone and nobody wants to hire them anymore. And so everybody was there for a different reason. And so my job was essentially coach them through and try to deal with their specific reasoning. And it was cool because one thing I would tell them all the time, specifically those who were ready to quit or leave the course, was, hey, winning this course doesn't mean getting to the end and us raising your hand and saying you won. Winning this course is you coming here, realizing whatever it is that you need to work on, facing your demons, fighting your demons, and then beginning the steps towards that transformation. That's the win. If you do those things and begin the steps and realize your faults and work through and start working through that, then you've won. And so so many of the recruits, man, it was just amazing to see that the light go off in their heads through the process, whether they lasted 3 days, whether they lasted the whole 10-day course, and then begin to say, I've been doing things wrong. And these guys were really able to hold up the mirror with these physical tools, painful tools, and show me what I've been doing wrong in my life. And now I'm going to change.
Wow.
It's cool to now see even to this day, so many of them have just changed for not just for the good, for the great,
Well, those and you gotta, we talk about the self-fulfilling prophecy, the Pygmalion effect. You become what you believe you are. Yeah. And if you've got those drives inside yourself, sometimes we go out and we blame other people, but when it's all said and done, look in the mirror, right? You got to change yourself. You can't blame other people for the reason you're down or the reason you're up. It's you. You have to control yourself. And once you grab that, I remember myself, when I went through high school, I hated studying, and I liked doing math in my head, and the teacher didn't like it because I could solve the problems in my head and I wouldn't write down the work. And I thought, why do you have to write the work down when you can solve it in your head and write the answers down? And, but, fast forward, that's what it's all about. If you go down through, I know you've got some passion projects like human trafficking. Tell us a little bit about that. And, our audience out there is pretty wide. How could they get involved and where are you with that project and what's it all about?
Yeah, so just to kind of condense it for the sake of time, after I got out of the military, I still felt this need to serve, and I was contacted by a few different human trafficking nonprofits that I would volunteer with, and then eventually I partnered with this one human trafficking nonprofit that employs former special operations guys and gals and former intelligence people to go to particular countries and rescue kids trapped in sex trafficking, but also bring to justice Americans who travel to these countries to have sex with underage girls. And boys, and after a particular trip I did, I was just so I don't want to use the word dejected, but I was just so not encouraged to say the least by what I saw, because I felt like I was just stepping on one ant, opposed to killing an entire ant hill, because as the statistics, for every one kid that's rescued, there's like 100. For 10,000 more that need rescuing, right? And so when I got back from that trip, I got contacted by Michael Bay, his producing partner, Mike Case, because Michael Bay was starting his new film, Six Underground, and he asked me if I would be willing to consult on the film, because that's how I started in Hollywood. I started out consulting on action films, working on the script, being on set, working with the actors, helping set up action sequences to make sure the film was authentic. And so Bay wanted to hire me for his next film. So after I got off that call, it's like these two worlds collided, the world of human trafficking and the world of filmmaking. And that's where I felt like I could have the biggest impact, because most people won't read a book or won't read news articles about, human trafficking. But what they will do is they'll watch a movie, because a movie is a form of entertainment. And so I ended up putting together a short film called The Unexpected. And again, it wasn't for it to be a big movie. It was just me to get the word out there. And I really wanted to focus it on organ harvesting, because so many projects, film, TV, there's so much talk about sex trafficking. There's not a lot of talk about organ harvesting. And I think that's because a lot of people don't know how to talk about it. And so I did this short film, which is on, and viewers can watch now. It's on YouTube now, called The Unexpected. And in order to, really find it, The Unexpected Bronze Lens. And then you can add my name in there, Remi Adeleke, and that'll kind of, for some reason, YouTube makes it hard to find, which I think we all know why that is. And so made that film, and then a few people in Hollywood saw the film, and then it was like, hey, this needs to be a movie. And so I wrote the full length, feature length film, which picks up 5 years after the events of the short film. The short film is based on true events. The feature film is inspired by true events. And it's just really digging into the world of organ harvesting. It's an action thriller. So, putting the pill in the donut, because a lot of people won't sit and just watch a straight drama about organ harvesting. So, I dressed it up with action, and it's very authentic. Think Sicario, but organ harvesting, and the good guys win at the end, so to speak. And so that's a project I've been working on for the last two years. And we finally got some significant financing. And we start going out to cast, if not tomorrow, next week. So I'm pretty excited about getting the word out there.
That's fantastic. Remi, when you went in there to save those folks, how did it feel? How did they feel when you came in there? Did they understand who you were coming in, coming in to help them? How was it?
Yeah, I mean, it's shock and awe, because these people don't really know who you are. Right. And especially coming in as a male, all they've known is that men have been abusing them, using them, selling them, so they don't know. So it's shocking. I don't think it's till, a few days in, when they haven't been used by us and they're in a good aftercare program, that they realize I'm free. And what I was going through wasn't normal. And I don't have to go back to that anymore. And so by that time I'm gone, though. For the most part.
Are those people from all over the world? Where are they trafficked from?
It's primarily South America. So we dealt primarily in South America, but you have human trafficking. I mean, it's a $135 billion industry. So it's a global issue.
Oh my God, that's insane. I had no idea.
Yeah, 135 billion. America alone is about a $35 billion industry in America alone. And again, when we talk about human trafficking, it's not just sex trafficking. A lot of people equate human trafficking and sex trafficking. Sex trafficking is just a subset of human trafficking. You have organ harvesting, you got forced labor, you have forced marriage. I mean, you have, people that are being used to move drugs in specific places. Any way a person can be used as a slave to do something against their will is a form of human trafficking. And so when you bring all of those different facets of human trafficking together, it's a $135 billion industry. Wow. Cairo, Egypt, to India, to parts of Africa, to Ukraine and other parts of Europe, to South America, even here in the United States. I didn't realize that Sacramento had a massive human trafficking problem until I was first exposed to it back in 2016. Houston has a huge human trafficking issue. Atlanta has a huge human trafficking issue. Along the border, the cartel has been able to, find ways to traffic people. And what they're doing is they're luring people to the border with the hopes of being snuck into the U.S. and they're abducting these people and turning them into traffic victims, whether it's sex trafficking, whether it's forced labor, or whether it's using kids as mules to fit through the small tunnels they get into the United States with drugs. Because they know even if the kids get in, drugs will be able to get dispersed. If the kids get in and get caught, then they're not going to go to jail because they're minors. So there's so many different forms of human trafficking all over the world, and it's a lot of people are not doing anything about it, and frankly, because a lot of people are not don't know about it.
No, they don't. And this thing with organ harvesting, tell us a little bit about that. How big of a problem is it?
It's a
And
massive
and where are they coming from? Where are the customers coming from for the organs, and where are they find it? And who are the victims? Where are they from?
Yeah, so there's different. That's I got a long answer to a short question, but it's all over. I'll give you a few examples of how it works. So, for example, in India, there was a story, an international story that came out of this woman who she was in a very low caste system in a poor part of India. She received an email one day, "Hey, come up to Mumbai." She went up to Mumbai. Oh, sorry, New Delhi, not Mumbai, New Delhi.
Mm-hmm.
And had a job offer. Hey, we're going to hire you to clean houses. That was huge for her, even though she was going to be getting paid little to nothing to be from that low caste system, to be getting what she was going to be getting paid. She hit the lottery. She gets to her apartment in New Delhi. Her employer, I say that in air quotes, tells her, "Hey, we need you to go to this clinic to get yourself a checkup before you can start working in these people's houses." She goes to the clinic, gets undressed. Again, I'm shortening the story for the sake of time. Gets undressed. The nurse leaves the room. She overhears the nurse say, "This is the woman that's giving these specific organs." Knowing that India has a huge organ harvesting issue, this woman got up, got dressed, ran out of this clinic, went to the police. Police came, raided the clinic, uncovered a multi-million-dollar organ harvesting operation that had been going on for a number of years. So that's
something like out of a horror movie.
Exactly. So that's the dupe. But then you also have people who are somewhat manipulated. For example, Egypt has been considered, for the last decade, has been considered the organ harvesting capital of the world. What will happen is you get a lot of migrants from different parts of Africa and also different parts of the Middle East that go to Egypt, and they try to get into other countries like Jordan, or they try to get into Europe via Egypt, and they get stuck there. And they have no money. And so what traffickers will do is they will seek out these poor migrants, and they will essentially say, "Hey, you want to get into Europe, or you want to get into Jordan, or you want to get into Israel, you want to get into any one of these countries, we'll buy a kidney from you for X amount of dollars." And then this person will come and out of desperation sell a kidney, and then that kidney will be sold be given to somebody who's a match, who needs it, and then that person will more than likely not even get moved into the country that they wanted to get moved into it, because it can't happen. So they'll get a couple dollars, and now they have one kidney down. Then that's an example of the witting, but manipulated. Then you have the people who are just downright duped. Right. So there's a story that came out earlier last year of a girl who from Houston, from New York, I believe. She traveled down to Dominican Republic to get a tummy tuck. She was told that this is the cheapest way she can get it done. So where it would probably cost thousands of dollars, maybe tens of thousands of dollars in the States for her to get a tummy tuck and implants and all this stuff, she was able to get it for maybe $1,000 down in DR. She goes down to DR, gets the procedure done. When she gets back to New York, she starts questioning how she's feeling. She's like, "I'm feeling lightheaded. I'm just not feeling quite the same." She goes to the doctor. Doctor runs some tests. Long story short, he does an MRI, and then he comes back and says to her, "You have one kidney." She's like,
"Oh my God, that is unbelievable."
Exactly. So he took her kidney. The DR plastic surgeon took her kidney and sold it on the black market. She went to go invest. She went to go track down this particular doctor via social media, because that's how she was connected. The entire handle for the person that connected her to the doctor had disappeared and was gone. There was no trace of anything. Everything had up and moved. And there are so many different stories like that. My last example is a woman who was murdered. She was from Mexico, found love in Peru on a dating site. Decided to fly to Peru to go meet this guy who she fell in love with over this dating app. Disappeared, never showed up. A few weeks later, body parts washed up on a beach. Those body parts belonged to this woman. And the reason why they caught the guy who was a med student was because he was selling her organs on social media, on a social media website, on a social media site, and that was a big international story as well. She died for love, and so he took all her organs and tried to sell them on the black market, got caught, got arrested, and essentially got charged with murder. So it's different forms of it.
That is unbelievable, Remi. You know, when you go down there, I mean, you've been through a lot, right? As a Navy SEAL, when you get into those situations, are there nefarious people that are dealing with them? Is it dangerous going into those deals?
Well, I personally haven't. I haven't dealt on the boots on the ground organ harvesting. I just want to be clear on that. I don't want people to think that I'm trying to say I haven't. What I did was, when I got back from dealing with this on the sex trafficking side of things, that's when I was like, all right, I saw that there was a need to tell stories.
I see. I got it.
Harvesting. So that's why I started doing the research to get involved.
Tell us about your new book that's coming out.
Yeah, my new book is out now. Actually, it's Chameleon, a black box thriller. It's very loosely based off of my life, Transform. So I tell people all the time, it's a fictional extension of Transform. You know, a little bit more about my background in the SEAL teams. Every SEAL has a specialty, and my specialization, I was a medic, but I was also a human operator, which stands for human intelligence. So I went to various tradecraft schools and lived in DC for a while, and went to a 3-letter agency training course. They learned tradecraft and a lot of other stuff. And then I went overseas and I ran sources and I implemented those tools that I use in order to collect intelligence with the hopes of going after HVTs, which are high value targets. And so there was a lot of stuff I couldn't talk about in my memoir, Transform, because of my security clearance and the type of stuff I did and who I worked with. But what I was able to do was completely fictionalize this character, fictionalize the operations and fictionalize the events and time, and put it in Chameleon. Chameleon is a fictional extension of Transform. Like myself, Kali Kent, who's the lead character, he grew up in Nigeria, and so there's some flashback chapters of him being a kid in Nigeria. His dad was in the Nigerian mafia, so you kind of get this cool look into the Nigerian mafia of the 80s and 90s, and then finally but the story follows him in the present, follows him trying to uncover international hostage Inc., we call it, because this particular hostage taker is manipulating the stock markets, depending on, by taking specific key people and at companies or connected to specific companies, able to manipulate the stock market and sell short and do all. So I didn't want to do the nuclear bomb thing. I didn't want to do the virus that's going to get released. I did something different where it's and it's all plausible as well. It's about this guy who's very smart, and he's figured out a way to make millions and millions of dollars depending on who he takes and when he takes it, whether he releases them or kills them or does whatever. And so Kali Kent and his team of chameleons have to go track this down. And it's called Chameleon because a black box thriller, because Black Box is the secret CIA unit, and within Black Box, you have people with specialization. So chameleons are people who are able to become whatever character they need to become at the drop of a dime. And again, that came out of me doing what I was doing overseas, because I had to be a different person with everybody I was dealing with.
How was that, Remi? I know we're going over a little bit, and I apologize, but you got an incredible story. How was that? Was it scary when you had to do that? How easy was it? And then, growing up in the Bronx and having to deal with some of those nefarious characters there, was it easier for you to do it, to become someone?
100%. Because, I tell people, I remember going to my first tradecraft course where I was learning, spycraft. And I remember being in the classroom and just when they were teaching all of these terms and theories, I was just like, I was doing that in the Bronx. I was doing all of this kind of stuff in the Bronx. What's going on here? So So when I finally, went to the course, got through the course, and did it. It was easier for me. Yeah.
No, it's great having you on the show. I have to get you on my other show, GST Presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. You got a phenomenal story. Thank you. I just love it. To all my audience out there, thanks, Remi. What would you say, in summary, for people that are out there all over the world, what would you say to them in terms of, believing in their dreams and coming true? What would you say to them?
I would just say, don't quit. Don't quit. Once you quit, then it's easy to get to perpetuate that habit. So just have a no quit attitude. Realize that, you know what, chances are gonna may fail at first, but that's okay. There's so many lessons in failure. I have a saying: a failure is only a failure if you don't learn from it. If you learn from it, it's a lesson.
Yeah, there you go. I love that.
Yeah, so I don't look at any of my failures as failures. I look at them all as lessons. In case in point, I've been trying to get this movie made, Unexpected Redemption, for the last year, and there have been a lot of failures. But the cool thing is, there's been so many lessons that have helped, that I've learned from, that has finally gotten me to the point where we are now actually casting for this movie. And so I say all that to say, just realize you're going to fail, but find the lessons in them, apply those lessons, Charlie Mike, which means continue mission and get the job done.
That's right. Yeah, stay positive about it. Learn. That's great. Yeah. So what's the best way for people to get a hold of you and your books? Are the books on Amazon now, or where are they?
Yeah. So my books are anywhere where books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. As a matter of fact, Barnes and Noble and Books A Million are running a 50% off sale of Chameleon, because they're trying to make room for the soft cover, the paperback that comes out in June. So they're running a 50% off sale until January 31st, and that's only for Chameleon, not for Transform. And then if people would like signed copies of either book, they can go to my apparel website, kedjaware.com. So Kedjaware is an apparel company I have, where everything that we create as it relates to apparel, we want it to be inspirational, motivational, and educational. So this particular sweater, Unlimited Potential, on the back of it, there's an MRI.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, that's great. Fantastic.
Scan of the brain, and the brain, matter. The words are unlimited potential. And then we got process rated outcome, a bunch of other cool stuff. But if you go to kedjaware.com, KEJOware.com, you can get signed copies of Chameleon or Transform. And but yeah, you can get books where books are sold. You can find me anywhere: LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I got a unique name, so it's just my name, Remi Adeleke.
Yeah, so check out Remi Adeleke. To the audience out there, thank you for joining one more time. Yeah. Runday presents. It's great to have you here, Remi. Thanks for your time. Thanks for all your staff to help coordinate this. And thanks to all of you out there for joining us today. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back to you again in 2 weeks with another exciting edition. Thanks, Remi. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Gary.
Take care.
All right, brother.